But if it comes necessary, I mean, really, I see it endangering me and my mother's lives, then I will leave, and they can have it.
A lot of people, especially older people, they just don't want to leave their homes. And there's not much you can say. If he don't want to leave, you can advise him to leave, and you can tell him what's happening. And if he doesn't want to leave, there's not much you can do.
What are you going to be doing when it hits?
What are we going to be doing? Probably what we're doing right now, trying to get them out. Then they'll be ready to go.
But most residents here had left for safer ground already. Florida wildlife rangers were on hand to guard against looting. A warning sign on this day of waiting on Florida's Gulf Coast, early flooding. It's been a day filled with such signs. For people who decided to wait, they were signs well worth watching. Gene Randall, CNN, in the town of Gina, on Florida's Gulf Coast.
Over 100 miles away. This area didn't get much lead time to evacuate because of Elena's change in track. But it's not nearly as populated as northwest Florida, and it wasn't as hard a job to get people out. This is Bill Millett's first hurricane, but working for Florida Power will probably make it a busy first experience for him.
I've only been with the company for about 9 months now.
Have any reason to believe it's going to change this pattern? That is, it's going to remain anything but storm. Some of the best-looking pictures we've seen of this storm since it was formed, and now we're beginning to pick out the eye. You can see it right there, 50 miles to the west-southwest. Force winds, perhaps out around Cedar Key, but we don't have any reports coming in from there, so it's hard to verify. The land reporting stations that we see still have winds gusting upwards around 40 to occasionally 50 miles. Apalachicola radar, there's the well-defined eye, there's the circular bands around the storm, and again, it is just remaining.
See Elena offshore, but there you can see that counterclockwise flow, and it looks like a pretty strong feeder band wrapping around that storm, pushing inland. Here's Tampa, and some pretty intense thunderstorms around the Tampa Bay vicinity. And keep in mind, these thunderstorms are capable of producing severe weather. Also, these thunderstorms are capable of producing tornadoes, so it's a pretty gloomy-looking day across the Sunshine State. Look at the showers and thunderstorms around Fort Myers, Florida, and you can see this rain extends all the way over towards Orlando. Pretty intense rainfall, and we'll keep you advised. Here's Charlie with an update on hurricane.
The intense storm that's really winding up at a tropical wave. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Another tropical wave marching across the central Atlantic. That bears watching as well. The local weather in view after this.
Would you know what to do if a tornado was approaching? If you were in an office building or a school, you should go to an interior hallway on the lowest floor and stay out of gymnasiums and wide-span roofed areas. In a shopping center, go to a designated area, not to your parked car. In open country or in a mobile home, seek shelter in a ditch or ravine or in a community storm shelter. Do not stay in your mobile home and do not try to outdrive the storm. This tornado safety tip, courtesy of the Weather Channel.
Between Fort Myers and Naples and extending north to just north of Vero Beach, some of these tops here up to about 35,000 feet, and rotating around the storm here, moving northeast at about 30 miles per hour, but at least it looks like Miami in for a pretty decent day. Can't rule out the possibility of a shower later on. Next up.
Closer up than we had a little while ago on the satellite shot, and you can see the dot right there in the center.
Heavy rainfall, needless to say.
Severe thunderstorm warning for Brevard County, and another one just brought in here. We have a severe thunderstorm warning out for Lake and Orange counties, and that is in effect until 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And you can see Lake County in this area here, some very heavy thunderstorms continuing, the eye of the hurricane.
So keep tuned. The threat now shifting farther west across the rest of the Florida Panhandle.
This moment. Well, presently it's located about 225 miles east-southeast of New Orleans, or about 125 miles southeast of Mobile, Alabama. You can see on our screen right here beside us. The big factor right now is it's still very strong, 120 to 125 mile per hour winds, and it's moving toward the west to west-northwest. That means it's increasing its threat to New Orleans.
Kind of a tendency now, when can we expect landfall?
Well, anytime within about the next 12 to 18 hours. If it would make land...
By Elena's hurricane-force winds, Franklin County waterfront property was underwater. High winds and high water rocked homes along the Gulf of Mexico and Apalachicola Bay. Except for a couple of ducks and a few holdouts, beach areas were deserted.
The water's coming up extremely fast. As you can see, a lot of the houses are underwater here.
Are there any people left down here?
There's one family right down the road just where you came from, this side of Martha Ann's, and they will not leave.
Evacuation efforts also included rescuing a shivering kitten.
This little cat was over in the ditch, almost ready to drown, and I just
swept him out of the water. This is Highway 98, the coastal highway along the Gulf of Mexico with Elena just offshore. Much of this road has been cut off. Some residents fled from Elena without pulling their boats from the water. There's no telling where these craft will be found when their owners return. For others, finding their homes intact will be enough. In Franklin County, Lee Manila, News 4.
Shuttle as they took a second spacewalk to fix a disabled satellite. Well, when they could break themselves away from watching the storm, they rewired the satellite.
Darlene, indeed, an increase in the forward speed to closer to 12 to 15 miles an hour. That increases the threat to Louisiana coast because evacuations are just now getting started. They should be rushed to completion. We cannot emphasize that enough because this is a very dangerous hurricane. The nearer it comes to the shore, the tides are going to come up, the water's going to come up.
It moves into the coast yesterday, sits over here by Cedar Key. Now look at it back off. The eye really developed today as the storm intensified, became more circular, then moving generally to the west tonight. One other thing to look at high pressure nosing in over here. There's the edge. It's a high pressure system pushing down, and actually it nosed down the coast enough to keep that thing from going across the peninsula and actually push it back over this way. Is it going to continue to go west?
There you can see the hurricane eye. But what we want to do now is we want to look at the radar out of line.
A very powerful hurricane, Elena, continuing to move reasonably rapidly, at least compared to last night, onto the west, and that is putting the coast of Louisiana under extreme threat. And Mississippi. Once again, a look at the Pensacola radar so you can see just where the storm is. And notice now drawing just about a beam of Pensacola, and on this track appears to be heading directly towards New Orleans. Hard to say if it's going to maintain that, but we will keep a very close eye on it.
It is just about due south of Mobile, Alabama. Spiral bands just beginning to make their way up into Gulfport, Mississippi, and you can see the rain just beginning to make its way into New Orleans and Lake Pontchartrain. Now, most of this rain preceding the storm is light.
Target area for landfall probably in about 3 hours' time from now. Hurricane force conditions are now spreading towards Mobile. We've had winds of 90 to 95 miles per hour in this area, back into Pensacola, tornadoes, the whole works. And we'll be telling you all about the storm throughout the morning. It hit land the last couple of days. It now is showing us that it looks as if this entire region of southeast Mississippi is going to be the target. And that means that anywhere to the right of this storm, along the coast of Mississippi and Alabama and Florida, it's going to be a rough morning. We've already seen tremendous hurricane conditions overspreading western parts of Florida and southern Alabama. Pensacola still, in the last hour, has had winds gusting over 80 miles per hour, even though the eye is well over here. The strongest winds are right along the center of the storm in the eye, which means that Pascagoula right now is getting hit very hard. Dauphin Island was hit hard. Southwestern Alabama hit quite hard, and also the southern coastal regions as well. Let's go on to look at the latest satellite picture, and we'll give you the coordinates this morning.
Beginning to move northward, and that's why the bands are spinning out those tornadoes into Gulfport. It looks like the center is going to go right up around the Biloxi Gulfport vicinity before it moves on further inland. But you can see a lot of the feeder bands back to the Pensacola area. That's why the winds are gusting to 70 miles an hour there, and actually the rain all the way back into Panama City. So quite a potent.
Is onshore. Heavier squalls are now approaching Mobile. We have more coming in towards Pensacola. Still, hurricane conditions are in this entire area, and thus
the eye, anyway, of Hurricane Elena is onshore just about now at Gulfport and Biloxi, Mississippi. And here's the almost, and I know you're going to have very strong winds there for another couple hours where you are. You must be right under the eye wall.
But after that, I should think they would diminish. Do you plan to try to follow the storm any farther west, Glenn?
As far as the moon, this is from Discovery, and that is the eye of the storm, the long pinwheel effect you get, the clouds streaming out from the center, from the vortex, which still is strongly formed, as we can see, just that little area of nothing within that sea of whirling white, which is the eye of the storm as it moves inland now along the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. The shuttle astronauts busy with their packing schedule.
Morning's up. I'm really pleased at the way that people responded and got back to the inland areas and to places of safety.
Have you learned anything new from Hurricane Elena?
Well, we haven't learned anything new, but it certainly confirms an old lesson. That is, at some time when we have a storm like this, where it's very unpredictable and very uncertain, we may not give enough lead time in our warnings for everybody to get back to the safety of the inland areas.
Did you find it odd that this hurricane went all the way over to Cedar Key and then decided to go back and almost make landfall where you originally predicted?
Well, that's certainly a very difficult kind of problem to handle. And, you know, it looked like that it was going to get on into the peninsula of Florida and then finally back over to the coastline today. It was a very unusual storm and one that created a lot of problems for us.
Well, we're still at the height of the hurricane season now. There's a tropical wave out in the eastern Caribbean. What does it look like to you?
Well, we're watching it very carefully. You're absolutely right. Anytime you have a tropical wave in the Caribbean in September, we're going to be watching for any signs of strengthening, and if it does,